And I think people have slowed it down and are more mindful about their travel plans and have stopped trying to look at, say, oh, I'm going to go on a vacation and go to 4 or 5 places in 2 or 3 weeks.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another truly inspirational episode here on the Smack Hospitality Cast with Neil Jacobs, CEO of Six Senses Hotels and Resorts. Neil told us all about the inspiring story behind the Six Senses brand and how it evolved from a local Southeast Asian resort brand to a global hotel company with properties across the globe. We spoke about some key aspects of the brand like wellness and sustainability, and also got a sneak preview on what the next destinations that Six Senses plans to add to their portfolio are going to be and what new concepts are on the horizon. Enjoy the show. Well, Neil, welcome to the show. Welcome to Smack. Thank you for being here. It's great to have you on the show. I am going to start off with a compliment here because I am a huge Six Senses fan. So this is going to be a very easy episode for me to do. I know a thing or two about the brand. I've been lucky enough to stay at some of the hotels. So I'm going to start with a very easy one, Neil. If I've never heard of Six Senses, how would you describe the brand? You've been with the company for a while now. Give me a brief introduction to what to expect behind Six Senses.
Will do, and thanks for having me, Fritz. It's great to be here. Six Senses has been around 20 years or so. And we were born out of a platform of wellness and sustainability. We go into remote places that that often have not been visited before. We're not frightened of that remoteness at all. If anything, it's a plus. We are pretty organic in our approach to both development, construction, design of our properties. Less is more. We are at the high end of the market, very, very luxurious, but in a kind of subtle way. As I said earlier, we are very, very focused on a sustainable platform and have been so right from the beginning of the company, long before people were talking about sustainability. We'd always been good at spa, but in the last 10 years or so, we've focused much more on other aspects of wellness. For us, spa is just one element of wellness, but whether it's around food, nutrition, sleep, anti-aging, meditation, yoga, all of these things that really drive who we are as a brand today. And as I say, in wonderful locations around the world. We do today have a pretty global platform and are touching pretty much every continent.
Neil, I mean, if you don't mind me saying this, it sounds a little bit like you were ahead of your time 20 years ago, because all of the things that you've just mentioned, the whole idea of sustainability, of spa wellness, of kind of treating yourself in a way when you're traveling. That's probably some of the most current trend. I mean, pre-COVID, obviously, but that was probably some of the most current trends we had in hospitality. Would you agree with the fact that you were ahead of your time at the time, and you're just spot on with what people are looking for at the moment with when they travel?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we can't take all the credit for that because the company belonged to another group of people up until 2012.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, we were way ahead, particularly on the sustainability side
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
growing our own food, with having I mean, even today we have a corporate permaculturist, if you like, which
Mm-hmm.
hotel companies just don't do that kind of stuff. But
Sure.
we have somebody who moves around, who works with the hotels and creating and upkeeping their organic gardens. We have animals, livestock everywhere, from chickens to ducks to cows to goats. I mean, we make our own goat cheese. We do all kinds of things, and more lately with camels. That we've just literally last week opened a camel farm in Israel. So I mean, all these kind of elements around sustainability, whether it
Mm.
be in the built environment or community outreach or how we operate on a day-to-day basis, really reflect who we are as a brand. And yeah, we were ahead of the game there.
And Neil, so tell me, if I look at your portfolio to date, when I visited a Six Senses, which was in Thailand many years ago, I mean, you'll forgive me for saying this, but Six Senses was more or less a very a very Asian kind of related brand, if you so want. I mean, Asia Pacific clearly is where you still have the majority of your hotels, and yet the company has managed to, as you said, is to now become an international, an international hotel brand. You've got hotels in Europe. We'll talk about some of the hotels that are coming up in just a moment. You've got some hotels in the Middle East. You've got a hotel in Brazil. Explain to me the process. I mean, you were there for the majority of that development, or for some of that development at
Yeah.
least.
I mean,
It must feel like, this is sort of a testament to your concept, the fact that you've achieved this with some very current topics like sustainability, wellness, and what you just mentioned.
mhm. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, when my group bought the company from the founders in 2012, it was very much a Southeast Asian resort group,
Yeah.
on the beaches of Southeast Asia. Plus, we had one property, fabulous property, Six Senses Ziggy Bay, and in Oman. But aside from Oman, everything was in Southeast Asia. And the goal, very much on acquiring the group in 2012, was to really take it from being that to creating a global platform, and even introducing a number of urban executions to the brand, which
Mm,
we felt um, would balance out much of what we were doing, and also because we felt that wellness was equally as relevant within an urban environment as it was within a resort, perhaps even more actually in some ways. So the goal back then in 12 was very much to drive that footprint, and certainly between 2012 and now we've been successful in, as you pointed out, in opening a considerable number of properties in Europe, starting in the Americas now. Our first was in Brazil, that opened
mm,
this year, but plenty more to follow, while at the same time keeping a focus on Asia too.
sure.
The one area that we're not, where we really would like to be, is in sub-Saharan Africa. We are in
Yeah.
North Africa, but we
Yeah.
haven't yet been able to penetrate sub-Saharan Africa. So that's the continued goal.
On the list. All right, noted. Um, Neil, then tell me. Let's talk about the whole idea of development for just a moment here, because I think it's very interesting the way you guys have gone about this. If you talk about some of the urban destinations that you've added, or that you're looking to add as well. You'll forgive me for saying this, but naturally, people will always more likely relate to wellness with nature, with a lot of space, with kind of your resort kind of setting. And yet, I think what you mentioned is very interesting, where you say it's not necessarily, wellness is not necessarily something that you can also provide in a city or in an urban setting. Whether it's a city or not is to be discussed, obviously. Explain to me how maybe that also works specifically with your brand, because Six Senses has such a strong relation to wellness. Do you feel like you have a little bit of an advantageous position there? Because, I mean, no disrespect to our friends from Ritz Carlton or whoever, they've got one or two hotels in the middle of the city, and they're, let's say, not primarily known for their wellness approach, right?
Mm. I think when people ask what we do, and I often just say we're a wellness and sustainability company that happens
Mm,
to do hotels as
yeah.
well, because it really is a huge driver of everything we do and informs every single decision that we make. Whereas our competitors, all of whom run wonderful hotel companies, that they're just not in that same mindset as we are
Mm.
around
Yeah.
those two platforms. And you can't just wake up one day and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be in the wellness business.
Sure.
There is a barrier to entry to this, which we think is very important, which is good for us because we also think it's what gives us our competitive advantage
Mm.
um, there. So we are very much, and I don't wish to sound in any way arrogant, but we are ahead of most all of our competition, or
Competitors.
certainly our competition with any scale
Yeah.
in those two areas. The urban thing is interesting though, because when I said we wanted to do urban, one, we only wanted to go into cities that have a a strong leisure component to the
Hmm.
market mix. So it's not
Yeah.
about doing business hotels, right?
Right.
So
Right.
cities like London and New York, where we are under construction in both, we will open Rome next year. We've just broken ground in Lisbon. So it's kind of, we are in Istanbul, so cities that have a lot of tourism to them,
Mm.
where people will use the wellness offerings. But probably more important, if you go to, for example, a resort in Vietnam or Thailand, and you're a week there or 10 days, you may do a bunch of programs, but after 10 days you go home. So
Mm.
really, the urban piece and wellness within the city is equally for the residents of those cities as opposed to just the hotel guest. So,
Sure. Sure.
if I am in Thailand and then I go home to London or New York or Shanghai or wherever, I have that ability, if we have a presence in those cities, to continue my journey,
Sure.
my wellness journey, or my interest in sustainable practice, or whatever. And as a result, are about to launch, or we will next year, our first Six Senses place, which is our club concept, which
Hmm.
is all around wellness and will only go into our urban hotels, where we are reaching out to local community, and with a membership model type of environment where you can come and kind of partake of all of this programming and wellness and sustainable content.
Let's talk about that for a second, because that's very interesting to me. Explain your thought process behind this. I imagine countless hours of meetings went into this idea, and we probably don't have the time to recapture all of it. But give me one or two senses behind the Six Senses places or place idea. And if you don't mind, explain to me a little bit what you're hoping to achieve, because you've
Mm.
got, if I understand correctly, you've got the hotels and resort section, you've got your Six Sense spas, which are standalone spas and existing properties in some cases, and then from what I understood just now, you're adding the Six Senses places or
Yeah,
place, if you so
yeah,
want, to that portfolio.
yeah. Well, I mean, I owe it to my friends at Soho House.
Right. I was
Um,
going to say, is there a connection to Soho here? Because I
yeah,
sense there
sure there
is.
is. I mean, you have a great Soho House in Berlin. I actually
Yeah.
think it's one of the best in the portfolio, and Nick Jones, who is the founder, kind of an old friend of mine. He was a hotel guy with Hyatt for years, and he came out with something that was really really special, and really in some ways turned the whole club thing upside down, and made the concept out of it that we all wanted to join, right? As
Sure.
opposed to the old style club. So we were inspired by that. But we then wanted to do our version of it, which is obviously based around a club model and the commercial aspect of doing a membership. But we didn't. We wanted it to be social, but we wanted it to be, in some ways, a little more purposeful, and layer in all of our wellness content into
Hmm.
that type of environment.
Yeah.
So each Six Senses place will have a great spa, and whether it's the spa of the hotel in which that Six Senses place sits, it might be. But that will be part of the membership. But as I said earlier, spa is just one element of wellness. But so it's just very, very content rich. There will be a number of practitioners in the club
Mm,
all the time. There'll be a great food and beverage offering. We will, we will attempt to grow food there. They will reflect the values of Six Senses as a brand,
very nice. Yeah.
draw upon the club concept, but be extremely content rich, driven by all aspects of wellness and sustainability. So whether that's in the day to day programming or the lectures or the chats that go on, all things that you would expect in a club, but with a very strong focus on wellness and sustainability.
And Neil, are you looking to add these places to existing properties, so within hotels, or are these going to be standalone, buildings and standalone structures?
Well, because we haven't yet opened our first urban hotel, we're designing Six Senses Place into these urban hotels. And for example, in New
Okay.
York, we will have, close to 45,000 square feet. So, just over 4,000 square meters of space. So it's a real commitment with those developers. But we see them showing up wherever we can within an urban hotel.
Okay.
People have asked if we would do them remote from Six Senses hotels,
Right.
as we used to do with spas. But I'm not inclined to really do that. That's not to say that would never happen, but
Right.
we kind of want it to be part of our overall ecosystem,
Okay.
and that there be a hotel as one part, there be a place, there be a spa, so that and there'll be residences for sale. That's very important too, because if we're, most of our urban properties have a residential component today where we're actually selling condos or
Mm,
whatever. And if that resi component is within the development, you almost have a built-in, starting membership base.
yeah.
And what we're suggesting to developers is that they include membership for the first couple of years, in the price of the apartment or the condo that they're selling. So that it becomes a really holistic type of offering with all our different kind of brand and brand extensions.
Very nice. I mean, it really does sound like you've really thought this through with all elements of what you guys do. And Neil, I can't help but ask, can you give us a sneak peek of where we can expect some of those? I mean, as much as you can tell, obviously. I heard New York is right up there
Yeah.
on the list.
Well,
Any other destinations you can leak right here?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can. I can. New York will be the first. I mean, it's announced.
Okay.
And we're building in the West Chelsea art district of
Very
Lower
nice.
Manhattan, just above the meatpacking. So that's fabulous. It's kind
I've
of,
seen some photos, by the way. To those of you listening, go check them out. It's
yeah.
going to look pretty cool, from what I've seen.
Well, it's on the river, it's on the Hudson, it's
Yeah.
on the High Line as well. The next to open with a full blown Six Senses place will be London, which
Okay.
will be in 23. So that's under construction now. Again, the area we're going into in London is kind of the London equivalent of where we are in New York. We purposely did not want to be in Mayfair. We're not really a Mayfair kind of brand.
Sure.
So we're going into an area called Queensway, which is
Yeah.
kind of the other end of Notting Hill, and near to, walking, a quick walk from Hyde Park,
Yeah.
and we're part of the redevelopment of what was um, an extraordinary department store that's been there for 50 years, I think,
Ah.
called Whiteley's.
This is in Bayswater, correct?
Yes, that's
Yes,
exactly
I've heard of
right.
this. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly right. I mean, my parents used to take me there when I was a kid. That shows you how old that place was. But so the developers are redeveloping it, and it's kind of a million square feet of space. So what, 100,000 square meters
Yeah.
product. And again, there'll be about 150 um, beautiful apartments for sale, 110 room hotel, a Six Senses place, the spa, and some retail, some very bespoke, interesting retail that really kind of plays to sustainable practice and local farmers and local manufacturers and so on. So the whole development really talks to our brand values. So that will be the second. The third, hopefully, um, is going to be, which I can't really talk too much about, but other than say it's one of the major cities in China.
Okay.
So that's probably the third one.
That's the setup right now. Very cool.
Yeah,
Neil, while we're on the topic, let's talk a little bit about the openings that you guys have planned in the next 1 or 2 years. Then away from the urban hotels, I've seen some very cool destinations in there, and we obviously need to talk about the camel farm in just a second, and
yeah,
we'll have to talk about Ibiza as well. Because obviously, as Europeans or as Germans here, the Spanish islands are very dear to me.
yeah.
So let's talk about this in a second. Before we go into detail about the properties, let me ask you this. I imagine obviously these properties were planned before COVID happened. I would imagine, or at least the majority of the planning was done by the time that COVID hit. Anyways, tell me, I imagine it must have been quite the struggle for you and your team to go ahead and stick to some of the plannings that you guys had in terms of the timing to get going on the two properties or three that you had planned this year or have planned this year with Israel, Spain, and India.
Yeah.
Not only for the fact that your team, and I realize that in part of an opening, obviously some parts of your team will have to travel to the property to set certain things up, but also simply in terms of getting the last touches done in the properties. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that kind of brought with us?
For sure. I mean, it's been really difficult, and great credit is due to the developers of these projects and of all of our owners who have hung in and maneuvered through the challenges in each country. And each country, as everyone knows, is quite particular, and the rules, particularly the rules around COVID. It's we function in kind of nearly 30 countries, so just to keep up with what's going on every single day everywhere
Yeah.
is a full-time job. But you're right. Most all of our openings were planned well before COVID. Um, One slight exception to that was the property we opened. We took over in Brazil, where I visited it just before COVID,
Okay.
um, and we kind of cut a deal. But I mean, the good part of that one was that it was, or it is, and it was an existing hotel called Botanique, about 2 hours outside, 2.5 hours outside of Sao Paulo. And so we didn't have to build it, it was already built, but there was work that we wanted to get done before we rebranded it. And we managed to do some of that, not all of it, but we did rebrand in February. Um, and, it's going really, really well now.
Mm,
It's going well because Brazilians can't travel, so you have a huge, robust domestic market, which
yeah.
just kind of got stronger and stronger. Once they travel again, then we'll kind of probably there'll be fewer Brazilians and more international customers. But that's opened, um, and through that we learned a little bit how to rebrand something or open something remotely without being
Mm,
able to send a ton of, typically we would send a pretty intense task force of 6 or 7 people who would stay, 6 weeks to 2 months and really do all the training and handhold, the new hosts, and we call our employees hosts, and but we haven't been able to do that. So a
sure.
lot of that has to be done virtually. Now in Ibiza, which is the next, and all these hotels, Ibiza, India, and Israel, all should have opened last year, right? So,
Yeah, right, yeah, yeah,
so
sure.
they
Yeah, yeah.
are late, and the impact that has on the owners and developers, and the additional cost that is incurred in that, and carry cost with financing and so on. It's not simple. But Ibiza will be the next one to open in July. I think we're July 10th is our date. Reservations obviously are open. They're pretty robust. We opened the channel about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think we've got over €1 million of business on the books. I mean, people are
Very good.
desperate to travel,
Yeah,
and we managed to get in our head of engineering, who's Canadian. It was complicated, but we got him into Spain, and he's there. So there is some help, particularly on the technical side, to make sure
yeah,
everything's tested and commissioned properly. We managed to get in the number two there, was a senior executive in our hotel in Portugal in the Douro Valley. So there are quite a few transfers from Six Senses elsewhere in Europe that we have gotten, into Ibiza. So that is really going to help us with the opening, because we've got people there that know the company, that
sure.
live and breathe the culture, that understand what we've got to do, and the rest we do on numerous Zoom and Teams calls, and it's unbelievable. But it just goes to show what you can do. But
Yeah,
yeah, but we're excited about that. It's our first property in Spain,
yeah,
uh, and certainly in the Balearics. It's got a certain vibe to it and has elements that we've never done before, really. And that's because we've got a very creative owner that's also driven us. We have rooms on the beach. We're calling them beach caves. We have a recording studio. One of the guest rooms on the beach actually interconnects to the recording studio. So that's going to be quite interesting how that plays out in an Ibiza sense. It's the first time ever we created a position that we're calling, the director of vibe, if you like.
very cool. Okay.
I mean, typically that's not something we do, but even though, I mean, the sustainability and the wellness are hugely important parts of Ibiza, so is the having fun part, because
Right.
Ibiza is about having a good time, and we're not so religious about this that we don't embrace, enjoying yourself and
Yeah,
having fun, and nowhere more than Ibiza is relevant for that.
sure, sure.
So it'll be a slightly different hotel. We've um, we've even put in a guitar, a Spanish guitar atelier. We're going to have people making guitars there, and
Wow, very
you
cool.
know, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of some really cool things that we've not done before. So you can
But I
go,
think
you know,
I think Neil, isn't that also doesn't that also come to show that some of the hotel companies, and I mean no disrespect to other hotel companies in
yeah, yeah,
any sense or way, but doesn't that also show that's kind of where the industry is heading, exactly what you guys are doing? I mean, yes, you're a 5-star wellness hotel and sustainable company in the hospitality sector, but then you're also adding twists to your brand, and let's call it twists for the greater sense, like the hotel in Ibiza, where not necessarily a destination where you would say a traditional Six Senses kind of wellness destination just because it has a beach and is an island. But it's Ibiza is traditionally known for massive parties and
Yeah.
and all that comes with it. And then you guys go there and say, okay, but we can work with this. We can add our touch to the concept, and we can focus on the value and the sustainability and the other brand pillars that we have, and yet integrate the vibe of the island with what we have.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right, and you could be our publicist because that was perfectly said. And I mean that's exactly what we want to do. I mean, we are in the north of the island, which
Right.
is away from Party Central,
Sure.
and
Sure.
it as you probably know anyway. Ibiza has a lot of healers, has a lot of practitioners,
Yeah.
um, yogis, etc., that actually live in Ibiza. So there is that side of it that exists, and given our location on the island, I think it just lends itself to doing what we do while embracing where we are, because that's the important element of of it too, and you've got to give people choice. It's not about going into a monastery, but we are always looking, just as a brand. We have kind of an in-house innovation group, our own mini incubator, if you like, that 3 or 4 people that sit around talking about content all day, and what
Yeah.
can we do to kind of stay ahead of the game and be relevant, while at the same time being sure that our values as a brand show up in what we're building, wherever they may be and whatever
Mm.
flavor of that destination. So it's not about having them look the same or behave the same. It's about being true to our value set, but in very much in the context of the environment where we find ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, fully understand. And Neil, we can't pretend like it's not there. So let's quickly talk about the effects of COVID. I think everyone has settled on the fact that it's been terrible for the majority of the hospitality industry, whether it's the airline industry, the cruises, the hotels. I think no one's had fun the last couple of months. So we've established that. Can you give me one or two things, or are there, is probably the better question, one or two things where you think COVID has maybe helped in a way, or redefined? Maybe helped is not the right word because it clearly hasn't helped anywhere, but redefined in a way some of the things that we're going to see going forward. I mean, again, I think this kind of ties in quite nicely with some of your brand ideas, the whole idea of sustainability, and the not taking travel for granted anymore, which is clearly something I think where you guys stand on as well. Is that something that people are going to cherish more, in your opinion? Is that something you've seen in your properties as well? What's your take on all of that?
Well, we believe so. I mean, we think that what we were doing pre-COVID was relevant, but we think it's even more relevant today than it was before, as we start to emerge from it. I think the big takeaway for me, and I do believe there is some good in all this horror that's occurred and terrible impact on people's lives, but I do think people generally are more mindful. I
Mm,
think that they have slowed down, and there's groups that are way more introspective and evaluating how they live their lives, and kind of getting off this kind of rat race type of schedule that many of us adhere to. Um, so I think you have people thinking a lot about that. The buzzword around travel these days is regenerative.
mm,
Everyone's talking that, but I think like all these perhaps overused words, they come from a place where they were relevant, and I think people have slowed it down and are more mindful about their travel plans and have stopped trying to look at, say, oh, I'm going to go on a vacation and go to 4 or 5 places in 2 or 3 weeks. That they're more thoughtful about where they're going, about what the takeaway from these properties are, what they can learn from them. Can
Hmm.
they really, we always say we want our guests to leave in a better place than when they arrived,
Sure.
and
Sure.
that's about regeneration. We've also spent a lot of last year on creating programming around reconnection and rituals, and
Okay.
we've taken that very seriously, and each hotel had to come up with a number of reconnection days, and how can you bring people back together, how can people reconnect with their loved ones, with families, with friends. What is their takeaway from the country? How can they connect with in a deeper way with the country that they're visiting? Each property created a number of rituals to really showcase the culture and values that exist in the place that they function. So it could be something on arrival, something on departure. It could be a fire ritual during the stay. But there's 3 or 4 things that really seem to have resonated with our guests. Each piece on its own is not kind of mind boggling, but it's more about the concept of slow down, go inward. What's the learning? What's the takeaway? How do I really appreciate the place I am and the people that are in my life? I think the other big takeaway for me personally is that I genuinely believe, as a result of COVID, um, people are much kinder than they were before.
Very. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
think
can see where you're
there's
coming
more
from. Yeah.
patience, there's more tolerance, there's more interaction, social interaction in as much as is possible. But so these are some of the things that I see as positives that have come out of this.
Yeah, I can completely agree with you, Neil. And I think in some cases it's also changed the world for the better. I don't think
Mhm.
obviously that COVID-19 was great for anyone, and it's terrible what happened to families in some cases and everything. But
Mm.
if we look back, and my favorite example that I heard from a hotelier not too long ago is the idea that you could fly from Berlin to London for 10 euros,
Mm.
and whether that is sustainable and ties in with where the world needs to be heading, I'm not so sure, and I think that's a very
Yeah.
true statement in all accounts. Um, Neil, tell me a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about the wellness idea then, because it's obviously very very true to your concept. And I wanted to ask you this because I feel like you are the perfect guy to ask this. Explain to me a little bit, Neil, since you started with Six Sense, was 2012, as you said.
Mm.
How has the idea of wellness changed? Because I'm not in the industry for all that long yet, but if I look back at what wellness was at the time, where it was a byproduct that was nice to have, if you had a 5-star hotel, well, naturally you had a pool and a sauna and a lady or a gentleman who was very good at massages.
Mm.
To where we are today, where it's it's a main pillar of a concept, if not the pillar of the concept of a company like Six Senses. Can you talk a little bit about where you've come from, and one or two of the obstacles maybe that you had as time went by, and people that told you were crazy with the concept that you had at hand?
Mm. Yeah, I can, and I mean, since in since 2012 when we bought the company, as I said earlier, we were very good at spa back then, but we weren't. Um, we weren't really that great at wellness. We did
Okay.
great spas, we did great massage and facials and all of that. But I certainly knew, and in a previous life of mine, I mean, I ran wellness for 4 seasons globally, while being responsible for Asia Pacific. I I kind of took on the wellness job, not because I was so experienced at it, because it was just that nobody else knew anything. So I knew a little bit, and
Very, very nice. Yeah.
it was like, well, you can do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what a shiatsu massage is. You take it on,
Yeah.
So, but it kind of whet my appetite. And I was living in Bali at the time, and Bali was full of healers, so very organically, it became super important to me on a personal level.
Right.
And when we bought Six Senses, I very much saw the potential to take what we did with spas to a completely different place. So went out to a friend of mine, a Swedish friend of mine, who I felt was one of the great spa and wellness people in the world, a lady called Anna Bjurstam, had been around a long time, who I'd known for a long time, and she had her own company out of Stockholm, and which we ended up buying because it was the only way I could get her, and she effectively ran this evolution of wellness at Six Senses. And we started slow. We started with yoga. We did our own yogic programs. We were always quite strong at the Asian healing arts. We knew about Ayurveda, and she'd done a lot of work in India. So we amped that up. We did the same with Chinese medicine. So we amped that up as well. And then we started to move into the world of nutrition and just food generally. We came up with something called Eat with Six Senses, which is very, very distinct to us on food and how we eat and what we don't eat and ingredients and so on. We then did the whole sleep thing, and it's called Sleep with Six Senses. And we had a very strong advisory board with some very respected doctors and practitioners that have
Hmm.
just worked with us, over the years, and that evolved into all kinds of other areas. I mean, we were one of the first to really introduce energy medicine, um, South American rituals, which we didn't know a lot about. So Anna went off to northern Chile and became a shaman in several months and studied. So we introduced that. We've introduced our version of longevity or anti-aging, which is non-invasive, inside out. And at the end of the day, all this stuff kind of converges and just becomes one set of extraordinary programming, because sleep quality, for example, is determined in some ways by what you eat. So
Sure.
you come and you do a sleep program, and we adjust lighting, we have the physical environments, but then you've got to meet the chef and you've got to talk to. So it all kind of comes together, and I think over the last 7 years or so, that's really what we've accomplished in a way that has really put us ahead of the pack. But it's
Right.
also it's not just about the commercial aspect for us. We tend to believe that if we do the right thing, the commercial piece will come rather than the other way around. And our programming just tends to resonate with people, and for those people that care. It's not for everybody. Some people don't care. Um, but that has been in many ways our success, coupled with everything else. So that's how it's evolved for us. And what you're seeing is, you know, every hotel group now talks about wellness, but
Mm.
but the reality is that 95% of them can't really do it in a meaningful way,
Right.
because it's just not part of DNA, and we
Yeah.
have a ton of people. It's an expensive exercise. I mean, we've got trainers and innovators, and so you have to make that financial commitment as
Sure.
well. And
Sure.
a lot of groups won't do that, particularly now, where we've all been suffering financially. But so any extraordinary expense nobody wants, and unless you really believe in this as a concept, you're going to say, we'll keep that for another time, you know?
Yeah. Neil, do you reckon it also ties in with the fact that there is still some people out there, even in senior management positions in large hotel companies, that think wellness is being good at massages? Is that
Yes,
still a
yes,
mindset that some people might have?
yes, I do. A bit less so than,
Right.
say, 5 years ago, but it is there. And it's also the mindset of, oh my God, this is too hard, which is
Right.
why people still call us and say, will you do the wellness in our hotel?
Yeah.
Which we used to say yes to, and now we don't often say yes to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. But
Well, Neil, just like this, 45 minutes have passed, and it's been a breath of fresh air talking to you. Thank you so much for this. I do have 2 or 3 short questions at the end where I'm just curious to hear your answer,
go ahead.
and see if you let me twist your words here a little bit. Neil, the best massage in a hotel you've ever gotten outside of a Six Senses, which hotel might that have been?
I think at a place called Viva Maya in Austria.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Shout out to our friends in Austria.
yeah, really good. I
Um,
know your neighbors. I know you don't
yeah,
normally compliment your neighbors there like that, but
that's in that sense that's going to be just fine. And Neil, tell me a great hotel product outside of Six Senses where you truly say, okay, this is a good product, I like it. It doesn't necessarily have to be 5 star super ultra luxury, but just a hotel or a product where you really say, yeah, I like this for this and that reason.
oh, that's a great question. And although I've spent my life in kind of super luxury hotels, and working so much for Four Seasons, my preference is really for boutique hotels with big
Yeah,
personalities. Um, I love Ham Yard in London. I love
very nice. Yeah,
Chiltern Firehouse in London. Um, there's. I actually like what's been done with the Crillon in
yeah,
Paris,
yeah,
because they took an extraordinary palace hotel and kind of made it cool, as opposed to being stuffy. So um, fabulous. I like that. I stay all the time in New York at Nomad.
yeah,
Um, I think they have a great food and beverage product, and they have a culture at that hotel which is just so nurturing and warm. And for a cool hotel, and it is pretty cool, the people are super super caring.
yeah.
So at the end of the day, I mean, there's different things that really resonate with me, but those are a few of the hotels that I just love. You know.
Very nice. Very nice. Neil, on behalf of everybody here at Smack, all the very best for the openings that are coming out with Six Senses. I again, when we had the chance to get you on the show, this was a no-brainer for us. So thank you for taking the time, sharing some of the story with us. I hope we get a chance to speak again when all of this all of these funny times of COVID-19 have passed. And we can maybe look back and look at some of the things and some of the hotels that you've opened by then. And Six Senses Place is something I'll be looking out for when the time comes in New York in 2022. Neil, thanks very much.
Thanks, Fritz. Great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Special thanks to our season sponsor, I Reckon You, Hospitality's first customer data platform. Their philosophy is to stop buying software and building a framework. Their middleware platform connects a hotel's above property and on-premise systems, creating a frictionless flow of hotel and guest data that enhances the guest journey while increasing operational efficiency. Find out more at ireckonu.com, and don't forget to check out what there is to know about Smack at smack.media or on our YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook channel. We'll see you next time.